The NFL playoffs are upon us. In today's video, we're talking all about Saturday's slate of games. We got two big time ones. I got a player prop in each of them, as well as we'll talk about the spread or total that I like in each of these games. But as always, we begin with how we did the final week of the regular season. And it was a pretty good week for us. You look at it overall, a 3-2 week, and it could have been so much better. We had Joe Burrows over in completions on Saturday, a free square. Jahmyr Gibbs over in rush plus receiving yards. We had Devontae Adams to score a touchdown. We did technically lose a quarter unit on him to be the first touchdown scorer, which was one of our two losers. He had a target in the red zone, and man, Rodgers was trying to get him that 500th passing touchdown, but again, they just doubled him in the red zone. He did not get it. Ended up scoring later on in the game. And then a real big loser of the week, one unit, Juwan Jennings. Man, don't even get me started. They were force feeding him the ball, trying to get him to 1,000 yards. He had 10 targets, 50-something yards, like 5 minutes left in the second quarter. Boom, he got ejected. I can't make it up. But either way, a good end of the season for us. And not only that, we need to recap how we did on our futures. Sure, our regular season wasn't the best in terms of our props and whatnot, but let's recap our futures. A great year for us on future bets. We were up about 3.7 units. You look at the winners, our biggest plays of the year, Jordan Love's under, the Eagles to win the division, Calvin Ridley, we took his regular over and put an extra half unit on him to get 1,000 yards, which was plus 200, which he got in week 18. Darnell Mooney, we had him for 750 yards, which was a plus 400 basically play. Our losers, Deontay was technically two of them. Bijan down there for rushing yards leader. He obviously didn't get it in a long shot parlay there. Really the only loser I'm a little bit angry about, Jaden Daniels to lead the rookies in rushing yards. He finished second behind Bucky Irving. I should have just taken Jaden Daniels for like 1,000 plus rushing yard, or not 1,000 rushing yards, but like 750. Would have cashed, but he did not come through as the rookie rush leader. But again, a great end of the season for us. We were pretty good in week 16, 17, and 18. Futures obviously delivered some more winners for us. I don't know any futures pending. I don't really like to bet on the Super Bowl, but a great end of the season. But we still have more money to make in the playoffs, and it begins with these first edition of Saturday games. I'll have a completely separate video for Sunday. That'll be live probably Saturday sometime midday, and then we'll have a completely separate video for Monday Night Football, Rams versus Vikings. We'll talk about all these games and have some picks in all of them. But as always, we're going to dive into the things in just one moment. I do want to make one final note, and that is DraftKings right now. If you sign up with the top link in description, you bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets. Take advantage of it. Top link in description. Check it out. It's a pretty good offer. If you've never signed up for DraftKings, there's no better time than the present. Appreciate you if you use that code, bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets. Now, at the end of the video, I will be bringing on Logan, and we're going to be using all the lines for these games from DraftKings. So I encourage you to check that out. Those details are down below. We'll talk to Logan at the end of the video. You guys came in for some picks. We'll begin with the first one, my first player prop of the weekend. Joe Mixon, I love his over 69.5 rushing yards, minus 110 on Bet365. Now, I give out these picks early on throughout the week prior to this video dropping. Obviously, we send it to the DubClub. You can join that 2-week free trial down below. This line really hasn't changed. It might be up to 72, 73.5. You can obviously take a 70-plus rushing yards for like minus 125 on FanDuel. But I really like Joe Mixon in this spot at home, taking on the Chargers. Now, if you're talking about this game, this is a short spread. The Chargers are 2.5-point road favorites. I think the Texans can compete in this one, and we'll talk about it at the end of the video, but I think it's going to be behind the backs of Joe Mixon. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Joe Mixon has been pretty bad. If you look at him recently, he in fact is under in 4 straight games. Now, we'll highlight these games. First, Miami. They had about 180 yards of offense. He obviously didn't have a good game. Miami was a really good rush defense second half of the year. 57 against Kansas City. They trailed at the end of that game. Also, Kansas City, one of the best rush defenses in the league. Then, against Baltimore, if you recall, that was that Saturday game, Christmas game, whatever that was, where they lost 31-2. Not going to get a lot of rush yards there. Tennessee, he didn't really play. He played 11 snaps, so I'm not really going to count much there. But again, Joe Mixon, his whole body of work, he's been pretty good on the season, and I love this matchup for him against the Chargers. If you look at the Chargers on the season, then this is since week 10, they're giving up 4.8 yards per carry. So they're right here, fourth most in the league. On the season, they have not been any better. So it's not like I'm just piggybacking some stats. 4.6, again, one of the worst numbers in the season. And we've seen opposing running backs have big games against them. This is the last since November 5th. So, the last 2 months or so, running backs have got 10 or more attempts. And we look at these guys have been playing pretty well. Antonio Gibson, a guy that's not even his lead running back, 63 rush yards. Bucky Irving soared over. Rashad White, his teammate, didn't get over, but obviously a decent game. Isaiah Pacheco coming back from injury, didn't have a great game, but again, 55 yards. Bijan, Derrick Henry went over. Chase Brown went over as well. All these guys are going over this line. And if we look at Joe Mixon's other props, we're seeing a rush attempts line sitting around 17.5, 18.5. I think against the Chargers, who play a lot of too high safety, they want you to run the football. And if they can stop the run, they feel pretty good. They're not going to change their defensive scheme until you've run all over them. I think this is a spot where the Texans, who are down Tank Dell, down a lot of their weapons, it's really Nico Collins and company out there trying to catch the ball. I think they need to establish the ground game. That is the Texans' bread and butter. They want to run the football. When they can't run the football, nothing on the offense really works. They need to run it, and I think they run it early and often. I love Joe Mixon's over on Saturday. I would honestly consider laddering up to 100 plus. I think the 70 plus could cash in the first half if the Texans get things going. I certainly think they will as their offensive line gets a little bit healthier and healthier. My second pick, we're going to go to the second game on Saturday. We'll talk about this Ravens and Steelers game. The Steelers, double-digit underdogs nearly. My favorite pick, though, in this one, George Pickens, over 23.5 yards for his longest reception. Now, I have not taken a lot of overs for longest reception. All it takes is one, though. This could cash on the first play of the game, could cash on the last play of the game, cash somewhere in the middle. Just need one decently long completion to go to George Pickens. Now, you could take his over at 24.5. I'm cool with it there. You could take his regular over in yards at about 50 plus yards, but I think if George Pickens is going to get over 50, 55 yards, whatever you need in his regular over, it's probably going to be because he has a big reception. That's George Pickens' game. Now, obviously, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. That was what happened with George Pickens last week, and that was a debacle. If you look at him last week, not great. He had one reception, 6 targets, zero yards. Not ideal from that standpoint. If you recall, he actually dropped one deep down the sideline, which would have cashed this over. However, on the season, he's been an absolute beast. And this is just over the last 10 games. If you want to look for when Russell Wilson started, it's right here, this 44 against the Jets, Russell Wilson's first game. So he was over this line in all 7 games with Russell Wilson starting until that last game of the season. This did include a game against Baltimore, 37-yard completion there. We know reception there. You know George Pickens. That's what he does. He's a contested ball catcher. And the Steelers, has their offense been good recently? Heck no. Their offense has been terrible. So again, if we're going to take some shots to try to stretch the field and really open up the playbook, George Pickens has got to get some opportunities. And I think he gets plenty of them on Saturday, and I hope that is the case. I think they're targeting him left and right down the field. If he gets one-on-one coverage, Russell Wilson is not afraid of throwing it up to George Pickens. Let's hope he can haul one in and get us a 25-plus yard reception. Now, I know there's going to be people out there that are going to say, Austin, the Ravens defense has been so good since week 13, and I get it. There's a lot of stats that say, hey, early on in the season, this defense stunk. But since week 13, they've been really good. And I get it. They made some changes. They've been better. But we have to talk about the quality of competition we're facing. They give you the stats since week 13. That was against the Eagles, who ran all over them. Then they had their bye week. They faced the Giants. That was a disaster class of a team. You had the Pittsburgh Steelers without George Pickens, who his offense really flustered down the end. Houston, I'll give them credit. They flustered Houston, but again, they haven't been a great offense either. And then Cleveland with Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Bailey Zappi. So I really think the Ravens' numbers are really deflated because they face some really bad offenses. And I'm not coming out here and saying the Steelers' offense is going to make them pay. But I still think that the Ravens defense is not as good as the numbers the last few weeks indicate. I think they'll give George Pickens some opportunities, and I think that's all we need is some opportunities, and I think he'll get at least a couple deep shots. Let's hope Russell Wilson and him can connect on one. I think at over 23.5 yards for his longest reception, I will take a stab at it for a 1-unit play. I really think it is a great look. It's my favorite player prop for that game. Now, like I said, I'm going to have separate videos for Sunday's games. So I'll have more player props for those games. Those are my 2 official picks for the day. But I'm going to throw it to when I talked to Logan. We gave our favorite spread picks early on in the week. I'm going to throw it at the end of the video. I'm going to throw it to my past self. Austin, take it away. All right, Logan is here, and we're going to dive into our favorite spreads or totals for these games. Now, typically, in the almost every single week of the regular season, you saw Logan and I going through every single game. To recap how we did on week 16, that was the last week you saw us. I went 10-6, and Logan a 12-4 week. Very good for you. We love to see that. I put our season totals on the season. It's been a really good season. Now you might be like, why the heck are you recapping week 16? That was several weeks ago. Well, week 17, Logan and I were both dead sick. And then week 18, we were both traveling back home, whether it was Christmas, New Year's, and stuff like that. Plus, week 18 is a disaster to bet on regardless. So last week was week 16 for us. But hey, we got the playoffs games, Logan. And today we're talking all at the Saturday games. Let's dive right into the first one, which will be the Chargers on the road in Houston to take on the Texans. You've seen the Chargers laying 2.5 points here. Texans feel like they've kind of limped into the playoffs, but either way, they are still here. They still have a good chance of anyone out there. Over under at 42.5. What is the move in this first wild card playoff game?
Yeah, so I'm rolling with the home dog in this one. I like the Texans. I think if you look at a X's and O's standpoint, you might be able to back the Chargers, and I get it. I definitely see an angle of why you would back the Chargers. I just think this Texans team is kind of like a sleeping giant. They have the pieces to really put together. They have honestly, they have as any good a chance as most teams as kind of just being that dark horse type playoff team. Nobody really is seeing the Texans as a threat. I mean, there's a lot of people that think the Texans are going to roll over and just lose this game by 7+. I don't think that's going to happen at all. They need to involve Joe Mixon into that running game. In the playoffs, these games really do get tighter. The better defense does normally prevail, and that you could argue would be the Chargers. But there's just something about this Texans team. I think they're going to involve Schultz. I think they're going to involve Mixon. And I think, obviously, Nico Collins is that guy. They have enough offensive weapons to really be able to hang around in this one. And I think in the home underdog role, they present a lot of value in this one. Obviously, winning a weaker division, no one's really going to say, wow, they're just this juggernaut. But I still got to see it to believe it from Justin Herbert. This is a big show me moment for Justin Herbert and this Chargers team. They look good in the regular season, but does that translate to the postseason? I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, Logan, that's music to my ears. I haven't told you any of my player props that I've already locked in for the weekend, but the first one that people heard early on in the video, Joe Mixon's over in rush yards. So I'm not necessarily on the Texans with you. My pick officially will be the Chargers team total under 23.5, but it goes hand in hand with your analysis. I really think the Texans are able to establish the ground game, and when these get to the playoff games, these games shorten. You're looking at teams running down the play clock down to 5 seconds. And I really think you can run on the Chargers. A lot of teams haven't done it necessarily this season, but it hasn't been, in my opinion, mostly due to the teams just, giving up on the run. It's mostly they face teams that can't run, or they've gotten up early on games and then the teams just abandon the run. We're talking about teams like the Broncos, the Raiders, and things like that. When you've seen teams run on them, they've actually had success, and this Texans team has kind of had a gauntlet of a schedule to end the season. We're talking about facing teams like the Ravens, teams like the Chiefs, two really, really good defenses in terms of stopping the run. Heck, even the Dolphins, a really good rush defense. This, in my opinion, is their best defense against the run. I really think Joe Mixon has a big day. I think it keeps the Chargers offense off the field. And kind of like you touched on, the Texans defense, very undervalued here. I think they show up at home. That's where they've been much better this season. I mean, people forget just, a month or so ago, they picked off Jared Goff 5 times. They're certainly capable of turning in a good performance. I trust D'Amico Ryans as well. Our picks kind of go hand in hand. Let's hope the Texans offense shows up, keeps the Chargers offense off the field. Now, the second game we're going to touch on has been one that I think a lot of people have very low expectations for the Saturday night game, the battle of the AFC North teams, Steelers taking on the Ravens, the third time we've seen this one. Now, the first time these two teams matched up, the Steelers found themselves, I think, as 3.5-point underdogs at home. They won that game off 6 Chris Boswell field goals. The second time in Baltimore, I believe the Steelers were 7.5-point dogs. They got smoked. And now they're finding themselves as near 10-point underdogs. Do you think there's some value building in on the Steelers, who look like one of the worst teams entering the playoffs right now, having lost 4 in a row? Or do you think the Ravens steamroll them and move on to the second round? What's the move?
I will admit to you, this one's kind of put my mind into a pretzel, because you can look foolish, right? Taking the Steelers with the points, and then if the Ravens do win by 14 plus, it's a told you so kind of moment. But you know what? As you mentioned, you asked me, do I find value on Tomlin and the Steelers? I do. Given 9.5 points, I'll take a shot on them. I do think there's enough value on this Steelers team that definitely has limped into the playoffs. That's kind of what we're all victims to the recency bias, and the Steelers have looked terrible. But you asked me, in one game with a veteran quarterback, A coach that's been there, done that before. Can they keep this within a one score type game? I do. I think so. They have the guys. Like the X's and O's, you might really fool yourself thinking the Ravens are head and shoulders above the Steelers. Offensively talented. No, they're. I mean, we know Lamar's good. We know he's got weapons on the perimeter. We know Derrick Henry's that guy. But again, in these playoff games, when defense prevails and when these games, as you kind of mentioned, shorten, I think the Steelers can just kind of grind this one out, keep it close, make the Ravens sweat a little bit, make Lamar uncomfortable, because in years past they've had Lamar's number. They've been able to game plan for him. They still have the athletes to be able to do so. I think they control Lamar's ability to really get those explosive plays down the field, because I'd argue this Ravens team is very beatable if they're not getting those 30, 40-yard chunk plays down the field. If you get them in like those third and long Lamar kind of drop back situations, that's his weakness. And I know it's hard to say Lamar even has weaknesses because he's so talented. But that's if I'm the Steelers, I'm trying to get him into those third and longs, and I think it's anybody's game at that point. So give me the Steelers plus the points.
Yeah, I mean, a big injury news here, and we're recording this late on Wednesday night, is Zay Flowers. Is he going to play? It currently looks like he's not playing. You obviously, by the time you're watching this video, you have a better idea if he's playing or not. But if he's even not 100%, then it's going to obviously dictate those deep plays. So I'm going between two things. I really like the first half under. I like the Steelers plus the points too. I'll join you so we can both look like idiots if it's the case. I'll ride with the Steelers. I think there's been some value open up on the Steelers. I get it. They've looked bad, but they finally got George Pickens back. Sure, he didn't do anything last week. I talked about him early on in the video. I think he has a decent game. I think they're able to keep it close. I mean, we're looking at a low total, 43.5. They've done a really good job at limiting Lamar Jackson in terms of running, scrambling outside the pocket. They're obviously practice against Justin Fields every single week, so they're able to kind of game plan and mimic something like that. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is one of one. He's not Justin Fields, or Justin Fields isn't him. You get what I mean? I think they're able to slow that down, force some field goals in the red zone. They've seen Derrick Henry plenty of times, already twice this season. He ran berserk on them in their last game. I think Mike Tomlin gets the offense to show up. I think the defense shows up and is ready to go. Low total here. I'll take the points. Again, Logan, we could both look like idiots, and that'd be a tough look. But hey, well, those are our favorite spread picks for Saturday. Logan, any final thoughts before we sign out?
Playoff football's here, baby. Let's have a week. I love enjoying some NFL action, because this is where we see who's the pretenders and the contenders, because a lot of times we'll be fooled in the regular season with the first round exits. But hey, I'm seeing value on underdogs. I hope it does pan out like that way.
Yeah, sadly, only 13 games left in the NFL season. And after these two Saturday games, we're down to 11. Those are favorite picks for Saturday. Again, we'll have a separate video for Sunday's slate of action. And when that one is probably already live by the time you're watching it, I'll link it on the screen right here. Go check out our favorite Sunday plays. I'll be back with Logan breaking down all three of those games. As always, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Reminder, sign up for DraftKings, bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets. We'll see you guys back again in the next one. Those details are down below. See you later. Peace.